Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Butler, the MD Investor, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, the MD Investor Podcast. This is my first episode. I'm pretty excited and also nervous. I've never done a podcast before, nor have I ever reached out to anyone via YouTube or anything of that nature to kind of share information. But this is something that I've been asked to do on numerous occasions, and I've kind of been fighting it off, and now I'm actually getting started. So let's talk about it. Let's actually get an idea of who I am or why I've actually started this podcast in the first place. My name is Dr. Butler. I'm an internal medicine physician. I work as a hospitalist, and I've been a hospitalist now for about 5 years. Initially, when I first started out working full-time, a W-2 employee. And at that point in time, I thought after I finished residency, I was going to be making some serious money. I thought, okay, I'll go from a resident salary into a full-time attending salary. I'll start making some decent money. I'll start getting paid, and I'll have a great life. That wasn't the case. And because of that, I ended up struggling financially. I used to live paycheck to paycheck, and it used to be extremely difficult. It was frustrating. I thought maybe if I made more money that I would actually be able to have the lifestyle I was looking for. So in order to try to make up for that, I started working more. And it got to the point where I was working anywhere from, who knows, like 14 to 26 shifts a month. And these are just 12-hour shifts, most of the time in open ICU places with procedures. So I spent all of my time at the hospital. I never got to spend that much time with my family. And it started to get very frustrating and depressing. Where's my glasses cleaner? It looks like there's a glare on here. It started getting frustrating and pretty depressing. And I was sad about that, and I needed a change. And in this case, my change came when I decided that I needed to find another way to make money work for me and to make sure that I'm not spending all of my time, because that's something I extremely valued. I valued time with my family. I valued time with just the people I love, and I wasn't able to do that. I was spending everything I had in the hospital, spending all of my time, all of my energy. So by the time I got off of work, or even when I was off work, I was just completely wiped. I was completely depressed, just tired of working in general. So in this case, I started investing, looking into investing, and then trying to find out what methods of investment work the best. So I've come up with multiple streams of different incomes by investing in everything. I went completely full-on frugal, everything. Sold my house, sold all of my everything, just so that I can actually start investing. And I actually even moved in back with my parents, and I started investing like 95% of my income. Even with my family and everything like that, I invested 95% of my income into anything and everything that I thought would have a fruitful outcome. I started learning about taxes. I started learning about tax code. I started learning about businesses, business formation, creation of businesses, and just different various business practices. Anything and everything I can learn about finance, I learned it in terms of loan applications, credit cards, managing and investing in real estate, investing in the stock market, investing in vehicles in the trucking industry and e-commerce and government contracting. I literally poured all of my money for years into whatever I thought would help me with an outcome. And in this case, after a few years of being able to really hone down everything and start to get returns on these investments, I've pretty much narrowed it down to what I thought works. So now I'm starting this podcast because a lot of my friends asked me the same thing. How did you get started? I need help. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and it's just really rough. And I feel kind of terrible about it because I have friends who are in the same boat that I was sitting in a few years ago. They're working nonstop. It doesn't seem like they're making any more money. The cost of living keeps going up. Fuel cost is going up. Rent is going up. Everything is going up. The luxuries that they like, the food that they like to eat, all of these things are costing more and more and more, and they're not necessarily making more. And a thing about that is doctors are usually on salary, and if they do work per hour, it's usually if they're locums or something of that nature. But for the most part, doctors who are hospital-based are working in like a W-2 capacity, and they're on salary. And a lot of doctors don't know how to negotiate their salaries either. So there's a lot of stuff that doctors struggle with, and I really want to be able to try to help out. So that's why this podcast is here. It's for the purpose of trying to help doctors and other professionals learn about their financial mistakes, their mishaps, and what we can do to get better and grow wealth. My job as the MD investor is to help other people in the professional field to gain and grow wealth. And I really, really want to be able to help as many people as I can. I love helping people. I think that I'm a fantastic doctor. I might be biased, but once I'm in the hospital, I can only help people who are physically there. But if I create a message, if I create a voice, and I can help a lot more people in the world, I think that'd be a fantastic thing. So let's start off episode 1 with talking about the top 10 mistakes doctors make with their money. And again, it doesn't have to be a doctor per se, and it doesn't have to be top 10 mistakes. It's just mistakes in general that doctors are having, and healthcare professionals and all kinds of professionals, police officers, firefighters, just issues that they're having with not being able to move forward with their money. And let's start off with some of the financial mistakes that are being made. And now, especially with doctors, a lot of the issues is that being a doctor is extremely challenging. It takes years and years to get your degree. You have to go through college. You have to go through your med school training, your residency, and all of this stuff. Nowhere along that point in time are you taught about financial literacy. Financial literacy is nothing that's normally brought up in that scope of training. Like, you might hear about things like RVUs, or you might hear about things like how to do your contract negotiations. But even then, that's very, very skim of the surface type of thing. That's like the tip of the iceberg. You have no idea how deep and how far financial literacy goes. And with this is one of the mistakes that doctors make, and a lot of people make, is they're financially illiterate. Now, when I say financially illiterate, of course, money is coming in, money is going out. But when I talk about financial literacy, what do you truly, truly know about your finances? Do you know how much money is actually coming in on a regular basis? How much money is going out? What your expenses are? That falls under the 6 principles of financial literacy. So just real quick, let's talk about my 6 principles of financial literacy. Earning, spending, saving, investing, borrowing, and protecting. Those are the 6 principles. So now let's start talking about the mistakes that doctors make. Is first in the earning category. A lot of people have a job or career, and once they have that job or career, most of the time their education stops. Now with doctors, of course, we have CME, like you have your continued medical education. However, there's no financial CME, or there's no CFME, or if you will. And because there's no continued education in the financial space, a lot of people lack this. So most times you'll have residents going from making anywhere from 50 to 60,000, or maybe if you're a fellow, you're going to 60 to 80,000. And then after you're a fellow, you become an attending, and you could make anywhere from, who knows, 150,000 up to $1 million, depending on who you are or what you do. However, that's kind of equivalent to being a basketball player or getting drafted into the NFL. You go from having no money to having tons of money. And once you do that, your lifestyle adjusts to that. A lot of times people will move to different locations. They'll purchase a new home. They'll purchase a new vehicle. They'll purchase new furniture for their new home. They might get married. They might have a child. All of these things cause a huge increase in lifestyle pretty much overnight. And that leads to a lot of difficulties. So in this case, one of the steps that they're having issues with is in the earning category. So you'll earn, but you're not necessarily tracking what you're spending. So you know what's coming in, but you don't know what's going out. So it's kind of like I's and O's, right? So if you're dealing with patients who have heart failure or something of that nature, you know what you have coming in. You know every paycheck, this is what's coming in. But how are you managing what's coming in? Where is it going? What are you spending it on? And is it for something that's going to give you a return on your investment, or is it just a liability? So in this case, when I say liability, I'm talking about anything that's costing you money without a return on your investment. And in reality, everything you do in life is an investment. So I want to be able to help people understand where they can make their money at, what they can actually put their money towards, and how to invest to where they're not obligated to work all the time. Now for myself, I still work as a physician. However, now it's kind of like I pick and choose when I work. So now since I'm an independent contractor, I only do locums, and I only do locums part-time. I usually take about maybe 5 to 7 shifts a month, period. Before, I used to work tons of shifts, and I felt like I wasn't getting ahead financially. Now I'm to the point where I only take shifts to kind of keep myself in the game to keep up with everything. And then on top of that, I'm able to have way more time with my family. I get to be free most of the time, which is another reason I have time to work on the podcast, is because I have a lot more time in life now. But I want to dive deeper into these things. This is very new for me, so it might not be perfect starting out, but we'll go with it as we go. So let's again talk about financial literacy. So again, we have those 6 principles of financial literacy, and really breaking down those 6 principles are what's going to get us on the right track, and it's going to help us to start avoiding the mistakes that are plaguing a lot of us in this field. And one is remaining financially illiterate. That's terrible. And being a bad investor. A lot of times people think that they can do investing that they see on TV or they hear on Mad Money or something of that nature. Or you might hear your friends say, oh, I heard AMD is going to go to the moon. And then all of a sudden people are buying Dogecoin and they're buying Bitcoin and they're buying AMD stocks, and they think that it's going to just expand exponentially. And I do love stocks. I do heavily go into stocks. However, there's a difference between true investing, long-term investing, investing for return, investing for just money to have on a regular basis. So there's different types of investing. There's different types of trading, but most people don't do long-term trading, which builds wealth. They just kind of do what makes sense, or they do what they heard from friends because they feel like they don't have the time to really study the market, or they don't really know the market very well. And that can be a downfall catastrophically. So there's a lot of places that wealth is built. The stock market is a great place to build wealth. Real estate, an amazing place to build wealth. Business, an amazing place to build wealth, but it all depends on when. Everything is, again, an investment, but that investment matters on the entry point. Most money that people make, you have to make that money when you enter the market. That's when it matters. Now, everyone heard the cliche, buy low, sell high, but in reality, it's like that for all business. You make your profit on the entry. Because if your entry is always fantastic, then it really doesn't matter what the market does, because as long as everything's above your entry, you will always be profitable. There's plenty of times where people just, oh, I'm going to buy a housing, or I want to buy this apartment complex, but you buy it at the top of the market, or I want to get into this, but you get in it at the top of the market. And if that's the case, it doesn't matter what you invest in, be it stocks, be it real estate, be it any kind of business formation. If you're spending at the top, you're always going to struggle. So that's another common mistake that doctors make and professionals in general make. Another one is not keeping up with loans, or keeping up with spending more than you're investing. So what I mean by this is a lot of us have school loans or school debt, or we started off with school debt or school loans. And instead of regulating what makes more sense, paying down the loans versus investing versus trying to fund money into something that makes more sense, liabilities end up becoming something that supersede that. So for example, you could pay down your student loans, you could buy a vehicle, or you can invest your money into trying to make and create more wealth. Now that really depends, because let's say, for example, I'll give you a great example. Let's say you had the option of paying down a student loan. Now let's say your student loan was, 3%. You have student loan and you have 3% on that loan. That's not very much. That's basically inflation. So on a yearly basis, if you're only paying down your inflation, then there's not really much incentive for you to gain money by doing that. You're not taking a lot off the table. Now, let's say, for example, you have a credit card debt, and on that credit card, you have $10,000, but you have a 22% APR or interest rate on that credit card. That credit card is costing you way more than that student loan is. So if you never know where to focus your money is, you have to attack the interest first, because the interest and inflation are usually what kill people the fastest, and they never usually see it coming. So in this case, if that credit card is costing you $200 a month in interest and you're not paying it, versus a loan which is costing you $200 a year in interest, then the loan wouldn't be your focus, the credit cards would. Now, let's say on the other end, you were trying to get into the stock market. If you're trying to get into the stock market, and let's say you're trading on a regular basis, which is something I do, I usually aim for a 20 to 30% return on my money every time I invest. So if I'm investing $1,000, I'm expecting $300 in return. So if I continually do that, let's say I'm investing $10,000, I'm expecting $3,000 on a return. That is my regular return on investment that I expect. 30% is my minimum. So in this case, how I would function is I would use that $10,000 to make a regular monthly return of $3,000. That $3,000 would then in turn pay off my credit card and also help to pay off my student loans. I always want something paying for something else. So in this case, I want to invest in something that's going to pay for my luxury of lifestyle that I'm looking for. And I'm not very high-end person per se. Like, I don't drive around in Beamers, not Beamers, but like, what do you call them? Bentleys, things like that, or like a new Rolls Royce Phantom or something of that nature. That's not really kind of like my style. But in this case, if you have a place to put money and you're looking for something different, like putting money into a loan versus putting money into your saving versus putting money away for a rainy day, it all really just depends. But a lot of doctors fall into the mistake of falling behind on their loans or falling behind on their credit card debt and just letting interest pile up. And on top of inflation and on top of just COVID happening and then people having all-time high interest rates, you're never really prepared. Which brings up the next kind of issue, which is that doctors don't always prepare for, so doctors a lot of times will prepare for the best case scenario and not be prepared for the worst case scenario. And I usually do the opposite. I'm always prepared for the worst case scenario, but I hope for the best case scenario. So I can't remember what it's called, but it's like anything that can go wrong will go wrong. There's a law to that. I can't remember it at the top of my head right now, but I usually fall into that category. So like if I was a resident and I had a certain time in the ICU, it would be like the residents before me had a very quiet ICU. And then when I got on, it'd be hectic. Like I would be the black cloud. Like whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And that same thing happened when I thought that, okay, I was going to start investing. And whatever could go wrong did go wrong until I had to actually really, really put money into learning. So that's another mistake. One is you want the best outcome, but you don't necessarily prepare for the worst outcome, or you're not already set for the worst outcome. And that could be a mistake. You want to always be prepared for the worst possible outcome and then hope for the best outcome. And this is going to actually help save you a lot of money and a lot of time, because you don't want to be wasting your money on your investments. You want to be able to gain money from your investments, and you want to be able to build from there. It's something that I find is pretty helpful in terms of having a game plan. So we'll go through a lot of these kind of things. This is just kind of like my introductory ramble for my first episode, because I've never done a podcast before. So if you happen to be out in the universe and you hear this, hey, I appreciate you listening to me ramble. This is amazing. I hope we get to do it again. And we'll get into a lot of the financials behind it. Hopefully one day I'll get to the point where I can actually do like Q&As, like maybe people can write in questions that they have, or even questions for me in general. And then I can be able to share more of myself and more who I am and how I want to be able to help people out there in the world to do better in managing their finances, being able to invest and have freedom, and start looking for a place in the world where they can enjoy life. A ton of doctors, I didn't go into all the data, but a lot of doctors, we in this realm know this. A lot of people like us, or even in just high professional careers, like suicide is high, drinking is high, drug use is high, depression is sky high. And this is something that we all have to deal with and face. And I know this. I had to deal with depression as well because I was working so much. I barely saw the sun. I felt like I was only at work, especially when the winter time came. It was like I would be at work before the sun came up. I'd be coming home when the sun came up. It's like I never saw the sun for months at a time, and I was working so much. It was just depressing, and it was tiring and exhausting. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So for all of those who want to be invested in life, and I want to be invested in you guys, I want you to have the best outcome. I want you to have health, wealth, and happiness. It's amazing to have you here. I really appreciate it. Again, I've been Dr. Butler, the MD Investor, and thanks for coming to my first episode. See you guys next time.